One of these cost $62 trillion and can power a starship. The other is the reason our galaxy doesn't fly apart. If you think diamonds or gold are the ultimate symbols of wealth, you're looking at the wrong part of the periodic table. The true king of expensive substances isn't a shiny rock or a yellow metal, it's antimatter. Nuclear physicist Dr. Dipangkar Dutta from Mississippi State University joined me to explain the difference between dark matter and antimatter.
Antimatter you can think of is a cousin or a twin of regular matter. Regular matter is everything we see around us. And so antimatter would be something which is a twin of that. So it has many similar properties as matter, except that it is charged and several other quantities related to the physical description of matter is opposite. So charge is opposite and several other things which we call quantum numbers are different. We don't need to go into the details of what is different, but essentially they are like a twin of matter.
To even get a tiny speck of it, you have to use the world's most complex machine, the Large Hadron Collider. Back in 1999, NASA did the math and realized that if you wanted to fill a single teaspoon with this stuff, it would cost you $62 trillion. To put that in perspective, the author of Strange Chemistry recently estimated that price has actually climbed to over $62.5 trillion for a single gram.
Dark matter, on the other hand, is completely different. You can think of it as a temporary name given to this phenomena which we don't understand completely. That if you look at stars and galaxies far away, especially those which are spinning, and you look at how fast they are spinning, then it seems like they should have much more matter than we can see. So that's why it is called dark, because it's invisible matter, essentially.
You actually consume and emit small amounts of antimatter every day. Bananas. Yes, bananas.
If you eat any food rich in potassium, for example, a banana, some of those potassium atoms decay into a positron and other types of antimatter. And so when you're eating a banana, you are actually consuming a very small amount of antimatter.
A tiny fraction of that potassium is a radioactive isotope called potassium-40. About once every 75 minutes, a single banana emits a positron, which is antimatter. We are actually slightly radioactive because humans also have potassium in our blood and bones. An average human body emits roughly 180 positrons per hour. Don't worry though, the amount is so small that it is completely harmless. It might sound like science fiction, but doctors use antimatter every single day to save lives. They use it in a machine called a PET scan, positron emission tomography.
We do see them, we understand them very well, can be produced in the lab. It is used in many applications such as PET scan, which is used in medical facilities for medical imaging inside your body. PET stands for positron emission tomography, where the positron is this antimatter, which is a twin of electrons. So an anti-electron is called a positron.
Beyond hospitals, it plays a critical role in high-tech industry and cutting-edge science. Engineers use antimatter as a super microscope to look for defects that are too small for normal tools to see. This technique is called positron annihilation spectroscopy. Engineers fire a beam of positrons at a material, such as metal for an airplane wing or silicon for a computer chip. If the material has tiny, atomic-sized holes or cracks, the positrons get trapped in them for a split second longer before they annihilate. By measuring this time, engineers can detect invisible weaknesses in jet engines, pipelines, or high-performance electronics before they break. The biggest consumer of antimatter is actually the scientific community itself, like CERN in Switzerland. Scientists there crash matter and antimatter together to recreate the conditions of the Big Bang. They are trying to figure out why the universe is made of matter instead of antimatter. This research helps us understand gravity, time, and the fundamental laws of physics. And for me, most importantly, antimatter could be used for super-fast space travel. You know why? Antimatter is the most energy-dense fuel possible. A piece of antimatter the size of a generic pill could theoretically release as much energy as tons of rocket fuel. NASA and other agencies study this because an antimatter engine could potentially cut a trip to Mars from 6 months down to just a few weeks.
When you put together matter and antimatter, it produces energy. One could think of using that energy for propulsion. But as I also said, antimatter is very rare. So producing enough of an antimatter to be able to propel a spacecraft seems very difficult. But of course, it's not impossible. It could be possible.
To understand why galaxies don't fly apart, you have to think of dark matter as the cosmic glue. Imagine you are at a playground, standing on a merry-go-round. If it spins slowly, you can hold on easily. But if it spins at 100 miles per hour, the centrifugal force will be so strong that you'll be flung off into the grass.
There are lots of experiments trying to look for dark matter using these theories as a basis for these experiments. So far, they have all come out empty-handed. And so we don't really know what dark matter is, except that we see its effect through gravity.
Galaxies are like giant merry-go-rounds made of stars. When astronomers measure how fast galaxies spin, they find they are moving at incredible speeds, much faster than the grip of their visible gravity should allow. Dark matter acts as a giant, heavy halo surrounding the galaxy. It provides the extra weight needed to keep the stars anchored in their orbits. It is about 5 times more abundant than all the normal matter, stars and planets, we can see. Yet it doesn't emit or reflect any light, making it a complete mystery. There is a really interesting question. Why can you touch antimatter but never dark matter? Antimatter is made of the same building blocks as you, just with reversed charges. Because it is a form of matter, it interacts with all the forces we experience daily. Antimatter feels the electromagnetic force. This means light reflects off it, and the atoms of antimatter have solid boundaries, just like normal atoms. If you had a ball of antimatter, you could technically see it. However, touching it is a bad idea. When the electrons in your hand meet the positrons in the antimatter, they instantly annihilate in a massive flash of energy. We can trap antimatter using magnetic fields in labs because it responds to magnetism. In the very first moments of the Big Bang, the universe was a soup of pure energy. According to the laws of physics, that energy should have transformed into equal parts of matter and antimatter. If matter and antimatter were perfectly equal, they would have completely annihilated each other, leaving the universe filled with nothing but light and heat. For some reason we don't yet understand, there was a tiny glitch. For every billion particles of antimatter, there were 1,000,000,001 particles of matter. That tiny leftover 1% is what makes up everything we see today. Every atom in your body is a survivor of that ancient battle. After the Big Bang, regular matter was spread out too smoothly. On its own, gravity from normal gas wasn't strong enough to pull things together quickly. Dark matter acted as a gravitational anchor. Because there is 5 times more dark matter than normal matter, it clumped together first, creating a web of gravity. Normal gas was drawn into these dark matter wells, which allowed the first stars and galaxies to form. Without dark matter, the universe would still be a giant, thin cloud of cold gas, and gravity wouldn't have been strong enough to build the Milky Way. There is a perfect balance. Antimatter had to almost, but not quite, destroy everything so that we could have building blocks. Dark matter had to provide the invisible scaffolding so those building blocks could be shaped into galaxies.